So, hello guys. I'm back. The channel's back. As some of you might have seen, I've recently started as one of the new hosts on the Blue Podcasts. And I wanted some space to do some talking about Manchester United because Blue Podcast is very wide ranging in its subjects. A lot of Chelsea on there, a lot of European football. I need some space to put out my feelings about Manchester United. So I thought this would be the best place to do it, is to bring the channel back and just have a little chat with you guys on here as to exactly what I think on certain situations around the club. So we're going to be doing that here. They're going to be these kind of longer form podcast type things where I'm just going to be talking to you guys directly. We're not going to edit it in any way. We're just going to sit down, have a chat, go through some stuff, and kind of see how we feel. We're going to do this as a kind of first episode. I don't know if we're going to episode number them or just going to call them what they are. But first time back, and we're going to talk about Manchester United's season because it has just ended in a rather positive fashion with our win the other day against Manchester City. I thought it was a good performance, first of all. Not a bad way to close the season, especially considering how I believe it went. And give us a little bit more positivity and hopefully a better look into the future. I'm sure we'll look into the future of Manchester United going forwards on another video. But today we're just going to go through some of the most important things to think about from this season and where I think we're going to go in terms of just in a couple of aspects. So, first of all, let's talk about our new manager because there is rumours that Ten Hag has already been sacked. Don't believe them, if I'm honest. And I don't think it's the right move to get rid of him either. I don't think there are many better options, and I don't think the options that are available are worth the hassle of sacking someone because it's going to be so expensive at this point that if you're going to get rid of him, you've got to be getting somebody good in. And I don't think there's anybody out there that I'm necessarily that excited about, if I'm honest. But we'll go through it. So on the screen now, you can see a list of names. These are the top 10 most likely to get the Manchester United job. Based on the average odds on bookie sites. So McKenna is the favourite, and then working our way down, Graham Potter is actually 11th, but the 10th, but number 7 here is Anzi Flick, who has just taken the Barca job. So he is no longer an option. So I've just kind of cancelled him out and replaced him with Potter down the bottom there. There are some interesting options in this list. So we're going to go through it. In terms of options that I think could do a good job, I think Ruben Amorim would probably be my first choice on this list. Again, he's just going to solidify their backline. Doesn't score that many goals, but per game isn't too bad. Obviously, he hasn't played as many games as the other teams, with only a couple of names on there, managing less games so far. But has got a surprisingly large number of wins in comparison to the other names. There's a great win percentage, way higher than the next best option, which surprisingly is Ten Hag by another 7%. But obviously, both worked in leagues that aren't in the top 5 leagues, technically, in the Portuguese and the Eredivisie. Both leagues I have a load of respect for. And I think that Ten Hag has come over from the Dutch league and last season performed very, very well. So I don't think it's a big of an issue if we were to hire someone from a league that isn't the Prem, the Bundesliga, the Serie A, Liga, or the La Liga. I think working with the Portuguese league or the Liga Portugal or whatever it's called these days because they keep changing the bloody name, is absolutely fine. And he's linked with the Liverpool job for a reason. He was linked with the Bayern job for a reason. Obviously his name is always in the hat with Chelsea, although I don't think he's made their shortlist for whatever reason. I think he'd be the name I'd pick from this list. I think if you look at the likes of De Zerbi and Potter and Frank, as in Premier League managers from kind of smaller clubs, none of whom have shown any kind of ability to win trophies, with 2 between the pair of them, with Potter winning 1 in Sweden, De Zerbi winning 1 in Ukraine as in a League Cup, but neither of them winning any major titles, none of them winning any kind of European titles to speak of. So those would be kind of what I'd be looking for. At least Amorim has won 2 league titles since being in being in Portugal, and then obviously he's won 4 cups as well in that time, including winning one with Braga, which is not one of the big 3 clubs and is very impressive and something that stands towards him. He doesn't concede many goals, and okay, he hasn't scored as many, but it's not too bad if you break it down over the small amount of time that he's been at the club. And obviously he wins a lot, and his structure is very sound. He has a very clear system, and I think it would work much better. Nagelsmann is the other one, and the thing with Nagelsmann is he's going to go out there and just attack. You can see by the numbers here, defensively, pretty bang average, and you can compare him with everybody else. He does not stand out in any way, both positively or negatively, but he does go out there and he attacks. And he will go out there and he'll play forward-thinking football. Oh, that came out wrong. Oh, Jesus. He'll go out there and play forward-thinking football, and he will get us goals. His win percentage isn't that bad either. My one thing is he is nowhere near Ten Hag in less games. So he did get set by Bayern after a pretty weak time there, especially after how good he was at Leipzig. I think if you were looking at him still at Leipzig, or he hadn't gone to Bayern and gone straight to Germany, I'd be a lot more confident about hiring him. But that Bayern season, even though I think they ended up winning the league, still, it just knocks him a little bit. That it just knocks him just that little bit. And he's played enough games now as a manager where I'd expect a little bit more from him. So I don't think he's too much of an option. McKenna hasn't played enough games, in my opinion. His win percentage is pretty decent considering he's not played that many. But again, same as Nagelsmann, still not better than Ten Hag. And in less games, you'd probably expect him to perform better. You expect him to kind of start high and then mellow down. If this is him starting, where is it going to go after a few seasons? You don't know. He's also never won a trophy and has never been a top-level manager. He's only ever managed in League One, the Championship, and I watch him a lot because of, obviously, I follow Ipswich as well. And he's very, very good. He's very good at hitting teams on the break. He is the spitting image of Ollie. And when I look at Ollie's tactics, I think, yeah, this is the guy who made those tactics. You could see he was on the coaching team there. You could see that was his style that's now been brought through into his own team. And it's very good football. And it's football that I enjoyed watching for a long time at Man United. And then obviously I enjoy watching it at Ipswich. But I don't think he's ready. He needs to prove himself. It's the same with Frank and Potter and De Zerbi. He's not won anything. He's not put his name down to say, okay, this is what we want to do. At least with Amorim, even though he's managing in a lower league, technically, he's won stuff. So that would kind of be the thing. Southgate has won nothing. Pretty solid defensively, but again, very boring in attack. McKenna, surprisingly, is reasonably boring in attack, but again, less games, so I'm not too worried about that, especially if you look at the goals per game, it's not terrible. But yeah, Southgate doesn't score many goals and then doesn't break it down over the large number of games he's had now as England boss. And he's got a pretty woeful win percentage as well. In my head, it was higher. In my head, it was probably 60, 70, because we play a lot of weaker teams and we tend to demolish the weaker teams. But when it comes to the big boys, we tend to lose every single time, or it's a very low percentage when you break it down like that. It's like 4 out of 12 or something. I remember looking this up, but it doesn't excite me. He's going to go out there, be pragmatic, be defensive. He's going to help us roll over the weaker teams, but then when it comes to the top 6, we're not going to compete. We will end up being Arsenal. That's what we'll end up being. We'll end up being Arsenal, where we get 4th every year. It will be boring. We won't win anything. We won't see many goals. We won't score any goals. It won't be exciting, and that's not what I want. And I don't think that's what Ineos wants either. I know they want the kind of English manager thing, but right now, there's no real English managers that excite me. Not really. Just to touch on the last couple of managers, Tuchel's not bad. Tuchel gets points per game, obviously you can see there. And he's one of the more experienced names on this list, him and the person I'm going to speak about in a second. He scores a lot of goals. You can see there, he concedes a lot of goals, he scores a lot of goals, and it breaks down being a pretty high intensity back and forth system, and it's going to be exciting, and it makes him a decent option, I think. The fact that he's won 3 European titles as well says something. The fact that he is available, because the thing with Nagelsmann is he's still contracted to Germany. He's gettable because I don't think he's happy, but he's not as gettable as Tuchel. And Tuchel's just been sacked by Bayern after losing a league title. But you look at him. No one in this list has won more league titles. No one in this list has won more cups. No one in this list has won more other trophies, just like youth leagues and random shit that I didn't know where else to put them. And no one has won a European or international title, because that includes the Club World Cup in that list. No one else has won any. So he's not a bad option, and I wouldn't. If we sacked Ten Hag tomorrow and we pointed either Tuchel, Amorim, or Nagelsmann, I would be a little bit irritated for a second, but I'd back him, and I wouldn't be totally annoyed because we're getting somebody in who's good, and Tuchel will win us trophies, which is very, very important. He'll be exciting and he'll win us trophies. We might not get back to the top straight away, and we might not be a better project, which I think is kind of what we are at this point, if we're being honest with ourselves. But we're going to keep winning cups. We're going to be competitive in Europe. We're going to score lots of goals. We're going to be a very fun team to watch. We're going to be very early stages Jurgen Klopp Liverpool, in my opinion. When they won that Champions League, they weren't quite competing in the league just yet. They didn't win a title that season. City was still dominant. But they won that Champions League and they were exciting and everyone was behind them. They got the fans back on board after a dodgy period previously under Brendan Rodgers. Obviously that went on to win them a title, win them another Champions League, and it kind of skyrocketed from there. I don't know if Tuchel would be the person to do that, or whether or not we just stagnate. Stagnating at winning a European title, by the way, is not bad, but I do want us to be competitive in the league again and push on and try and, when City drop off, which they will, when Pep leaves, when the charges come in, hopefully, when this period ends, I want us to then go back and go, okay, you've had your period. Now let us go and beat that period. Let's be a better era. That's what I want for us eventually. And it will take time. And I don't even know if it will be the next era after City. Maybe we'll get an Arsenal era or a Liverpool era and then us. Because I think it will take a lot of time to get back to where we were after the damage the Glazers have done. But it's doable. And I want us to be able to push. That should be our aim. That should be what every top team should aim for, right? Arsenal, City, Liverpool, every team should aim for that. City, you've done it, annoyingly. Liverpool have had eras. Arsenal have had kind of, Chelsea here and there. Everyone should aim to beat that team. That's where, obviously, our aim should be. But it's not going to be straight away. And I don't know if Tuchel's going to be able to build the club that way. The other name is Poch. And if you'd asked me before we'd hired Ten Hag, I would be, right, perfect. Let's have Poch. Happy with Poch. I was happy with either of them. Either of them looked good. Now, after that year at Chelsea, poor start, probably earned the sack midway through the season, kept his job somehow. I thought they were kind of putting trust in him and being like, okay, this is the new Chelsea, long-term managers, we're going to back them. No, he has a good run. He has a great run at the end of the season to earn them some form of European football. We did kind of steal it from them, but who knows. And then they sack him out of nowhere, and I don't think it was deserved. I think they were better off sticking with him. He would be a better project manager, but we would start off worse and we'd get better, but I don't know. He's never shown any kind of aptitude of winning trophies, the same way that Tuchel has, or even Nagelsmann, or Ten Hag, or Amorim even. Like, Poch has won one league title and 2 cups, and they were in France. All of them were in France. Didn't win anything at Tottenham. Everyone loves him for his time at Tottenham, and he was great. He built that team. He did build that team, but didn't win anything. Didn't take them anywhere. So we'll build, and we'll be better, and we'll challenge, and we'll put the pressure on. Will we win anything? No. It's important for us to be competitive, and maybe Poch right now will build us better than Tuchel would. And it is more important for us to build to being that dominant team again, like I've said. But in the meantime, you do have to keep winning trophies, because we can't sit here under a boring manager like Southgate and win nothing. And at the very least, even if you are sick of Ten Hag at this point, at the very least, Ten Hag has won us 2 cups in a row, 2 years in a row, got us to 2 FA Cup finals in a row, and a Europa League semi-final, which we probably should have won because we're idiots and we didn't do it. I don't know why we didn't do it. That was a weird run of games. That was bad from us. But yeah, Ten Hag has been completely competitive. He's had a really shit season, and that's why people are upset. But loads of people have had shit seasons and come back. People wrote Wan-Bissaka off after a one bad year. He was great the first season, wrote him off after a year. And actually, when you look at our defenders, and our fullbacks specifically, no one's better than him defensively. And I have no intention of selling him, because why would you want to get rid of one of the best one-on-one defenders in the league, which he is? Why would you want to do that? Even if he's not starting, which I don't know if he does, why would you want to get rid of him? He's been great this season. He was great last season. Dalot got injured. He was our best right back most of last season. Of course, Dalot's come back this year, and he's kind of had to take a kind of step back in the pecking order, but he's still kept up his performances. People are too quick to forget, and people are too quick to forget with Rashford. And I know he's had a bad season, and if you offer me a lot of money at this point, I'm more willing to take it. But you can't write him off as a bad player now. You can be more willing to sell him, but you can't write him off as a player at this point because he's had one bad year. People have bad years. Lots of people have bad years for different, very various reasons. We've been hit by injury. I think he's absolutely tired, by the way. If we're going to talk about Rashford, I think he's very, very tired. I think he's played every game under this high pressing system for 2 years. He's not had a break. He's played fixtures all through the summer, and I'm actually quite happy he's not going to the Euros because he gets that rest. He gets 3 months off, and then we get to see him back on fine form. We're seeing a trend of young players who play every minute of every game throughout the younger part of their career, and then they start to fizzle out quicker because they get worn down by injuries and fatigue, and their body starts to break down a lot quicker. You're seeing it a lot with Pedri right now. He's the best example of this. The man looks a shadow of himself, and he looks exhausted because he played 60 games a couple of seasons ago, and then got injured and then was out for ages with a massive injury because he played for Barcelona in all of their competitions in every single game. And then he went to Spain and played in I believe it was the World Cup that year. And then he also played for Spain at the Olympics, back to back to back to back. And he didn't stop. And he's now looking like he's probably going to, not retire now, but he'll retire a lot earlier than he was going to. And he won't be as good a player as he was going to be. So, and I think that's probably happening with Rashford. Not as bad, but it's starting to happen. So I think resting him a bit, bringing in some other options so we can rotate, is probably going to help. But bringing it back to the manager train, because I did kind of get off topic there a little bit. I don't think nobody in this list stands out as an option in terms of winning points other than Amorim. Nobody has a higher win percentage than Amorim. Nobody other than Tuchel has scored more goals in their career, and nobody gets more goals per game than Nagelsmann in their career. Fair enough, he concedes a lot of goals, and that will not have been helped by this season because a lot of those will have been this season. But if you look per game, he's still better than the majority of this league. Only Southgate and Amorim. Yeah, just those two options are better than him in terms of defensive coaches, and that's because Southgate sits and Amorim isn't dealing with as strong of an attack. If you put Amorim in the Prem next season, I think that number does go up, and it starts to level out at about the same level. Nobody's won as many league titles other than Tuchel. Obviously, he hasn't won a European title. Fair enough, you can say that. But again, who in this list has other than Tuchel? Nobody's won as many cups apart from Tuchel. And only Tuchel has been better in other trophies and Nagelsmann the same. But again, that doesn't really matter. So if we sack Ten Hag, we might get better defensively. But we're not going to... Nobody that's coming in is going to improve defensively and also match his goals scored. And nobody's going to be as good at getting points other than Amorim. And again, who knows how that translates to the Prem. I think it probably would, but that number is still going to drop. And if it drops even by 0.2%, 0.2 points per game, which is not difficult to do, it's going to be exactly the same as Ten Hag. And we're going to be in exactly the same situation with the young manager from a kind of minor league, with slightly more of a pragmatic approach based on what I'm seeing here. Score slightly fewer goals, concedes far fewer, but again, it's probably going to balance out to be about the same if you translate it over. So what would be the point? We're not going to improve that much. We'll improve with Tuchel, but again, is he going to be able to build it? Will Ten Hag be able to build it? I mean, we'll see if we keep him, but I'd rather stick with what we've spent 2 years building. We're 2 years down the road with Ten Hag. He's put his tactics in at this point. He's had his say on the squad. We've had the takeover, and he's worked with them for the last 6 months as they've started to implement things. Why would we sack him unless there is a major other option to go for? And nobody here is screaming to be hired. The closest you get is either Tuchel or Amorim, and again, they're good options. They look fantastic, but they're not majorly better than Ten Hag. Tuchel maybe in terms of the trophy he's won, but again, Ten Hag is closer to Tuchel than any other option on this list. Way closer. So, not saying that Ten Hag is the best manager on this list. I'm just saying there's no point in sacking him at this point. Nothing here says that, yeah, we need to sack him because this option is unbelievable. Why not let him finish the project? Why not let him see it? We've got a contract, let him see it out. After the season, you can't... I mean, I don't think you can blame Ten Hag for the season, but we'll get onto that. But yeah, there's no real point in my opinion. Let's get on to the kind of review of the season then, and talk about some of the fixtures. We'll start off with the tactics, just very, very briefly. Stuck to a 4-2-3-1 this season, majority of it, and then versions of it. Moving attacking midfielder back to form a 4-3-3, or pushing a midfielder onwards to create a 4-1-4-1 for, let's say, the majority of the season, with tweaks, trying 4-4-2, trying 4-1-3-2, and other variations of it. And the 4-4-1 there, obviously, of course, it happened once because of things. And Diego Dallo looking at you. Yeah, so let's have a look at the season. So we'll start with the Premier League and we'll work our way through. Premier League, things that are standing out to me from this to start with. We only lost 2 on a bounce 3 times through the season, which is probably still too much. But again, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, that's not terrible. Obviously, you need to work on it. Not many draws. It started to slip away at the end there, but again, only 2 draws going up until the 30th match day is pretty good. We are attacking, we're going for it. We are losing games, but we are not drawing them. Apart from this major draw against Liverpool, which in itself is a win, let's be honest. Losing to Arsenal and Tottenham early did not help us with our confidence. I can say we're beating a lot of the easier teams, but losing to the likes of Manchester City as well, and now Arsenal and Tottenham. Didn't beat many of the big clubs in this first half of the season at all. We're looking at goals as well. So if you look on the right hand side here at the goal scorers, red would indicate no one scored. Yellow would indicate either 1 or 2 goals were scored, and then green is if 3 or more goals are scored. So in the first half of the season, you can see here in his first 20 match days, we're not scoring enough. Only scored 3 goals or more twice. This game against Everton, where obviously we've got an amazing goal come out of this game, was the highlight of this first 20 games for sure. The best that we've seen. Even this game against Forest was a comeback against a Forest team after 3 games. After 3 games, you have to come back against a Forest team which only just stayed up and had a points deduction, and they sacked their manager halfway through the season. So that's not good enough. Our other wins came by 1 goal or 2. A couple of 2-1 wins. 2-1 wins against Brentford and Sheffield United isn't good enough. And obviously, the main thing is not enough goals. I'm seeing Rashford pop up twice. 2 doubles from McTominay, who got a couple of doubles in there. I think there's another one coming up as well. I'll have a look in a second. But that is something I wanted to point out as well. McTominay has 2 doubles. Garnacho has 3. Garnacho scoring 3 doubles says something. Not any goals here. Only 1 goal in this kind of period here. But then 3 doubles. If that form can be replicated, he's scoring more than once a lot. If that form can be replicated in multiple games, more games, he becomes very prolific. And you need people who are hungry to get multiple goals, and he is the one doing it. McTominay is also in there, and I think Bruno had one at the end. Yeah, Bruno got one at the end, a double. Quite a start from Bruno. That's another name I haven't seen pop up. He's in here twice. He's in here twice. Rashford's in here once. McTominay's in here a fair bit. He kind of carried us through this period. Martial got on the score sheet. Bruno got on. Lindelof got on the score sheet. Varane. Casemiro, this is the period where Casemiro got quite a few goals as well. If we look at the Cups specifically, he was up there with our goal scorers because of this period. But the traditional names, Højlund hadn't got any in the league by this point. Rashford only got it once. Garnacho hadn't scored in this period either. So this was where we seemed to lack in our goal scoring opportunities. And that's why if you look at the league table, our issue is goal scoring, and that's because of this period. You then go into a run of games, what was that about? 20 games there maybe, where we do start to score, and you see 5 different games where we score 3 or more, and no games where we don't score. We scored in every single game. I think this is a tactical tweak. I think this is where he decided to go a bit more offensive and try and risk it a little bit, which is good because it's going to be more exciting for the fans at the very least. We seem to lose against smaller teams here, including Manchester City. Did get a win against Villa, which was massive. Got that win against Chelsea just before that as well. Got the draw against Liverpool. One against Newcastle and Brighton at the end there, which were good wins. But yeah, dropping points at Bournemouth wasn't great. Dropping points at Palace was an embarrassment. That was awful. Arsenal was to be expected. Chelsea was to be expected. But again, if you watch that game, we should have won it. Dodgy decisions from the referee, but we're not getting into that because that's going to annoy a lot of people. That's not why we're here. We're not here to point fingers at Chelsea. We're here to look at our own performances. So lots of goals there. Garnacho getting another brace, one of his many braces this season. Great performance from him. Again, seemed to tire off at the end of the season, but I think that's something that can be worked on. And then Højlund. This is the period where Højlund started to pick up and he started to get a few goals. So you see one here, double here. He got a double in the end. Got goals back to back in the final 2 days because he was out with injury in this kind of period here. Although got one against Sheffield United. But yeah, started to get a lot more goals, and you saw Højlund pick up because again, he wasn't good enough in the first half of the season. Quick water break. So this is where Højlund kind of picked up. Rashford got on score sheet a bit as well, but again, a very, very poor season from Rashford in terms of goal scoring, and we'll see that in a second. I expect him to pick it up. I expect him to play more minutes centrally next season, although we'll get into that at a later date on another video. But again, this period, this back half of the season, we were a lot stronger. We risked things. We conceded late. We conceded against Liverpool to draw that game as well, and we scored to make that one a draw against Bournemouth. I won one against Burnley. So yeah, you saw our kind of good defensive work slip from this kind of first half, but you also saw our offensive work get a lot better in this back half, with only those games against Palace and Arsenal being goalless from us, which I think is a lot better. And I think when we can rely on our defence a lot more, with you seeing the last game against Brighton with Martinez back and Varane kind of back, Maguire was close. Once our defence got stronger, we were able to rely on them to defend and allow us to go forward, and we didn't concede as many goals. It was a bit of a late one against Newcastle. That makes it a lot more flattering to them than it was. We were ahead pretty solidly in that game, which I wasn't expecting. I thought we might lose this one, but a very strong performance to end the season. Let's quickly move into the cup competitions. It's going to be interesting. Start with the Carabao Cup. 2 games, 2 3-0s, one for us, one against us. Great performance against Palace, especially considering how well they ended the season. They were woeful at the start. Roy Hodgson, great manager, but has fallen off completely now. He's retired. Time to put your feet up. Glasner looks great. Obviously, Bayern were interested. But yeah, we gave them a humbling there. Garnacho getting on the score sheet. And again, this was in this period where Casemiro was on fire. And we got a goal from Martial, which I think will probably be his last ever goal for Man United, I don't know if he got anyone a bit later on in the season, but I think this was his last goal for the club. Obviously, tried to move on, but yeah, great memories. This was poor, losing 3-0 at home, getting knocked out of the cup we were holding. Obviously, Newcastle didn't go on and win it, and didn't get to the final either. So not to go out to the champions, to go out very early, second game in, not good enough really. This is a poor game, and something we need to look at going forward. RFA Cup run. Great. This is exactly what I want to see. A little bit more green maybe. A little bit more green. But in every single one of these games, we're scoring. either two or two or more, apart from that 1-0 against Forest, which I did watch, and they made it competitive, to say the least. I'm probably being a bit flattering to us there, but again, we're scoring lots of goals. Won every single one of those games. Obviously, you have to in the cup, but then against Coventry, we let it slip and we made them go to extra time, and obviously we went through on penalties, although it doesn't show it here. But yeah, a pretty solid performance from us, I think, in every other game. And obviously this Manchester City game was fantastic. They're tactically perfect. We had to sit back for the majority of the game, but it's Manchester City and we are not up to scratch yet. So I don't think we can go out and try and boss Man City and hit them on the high press and just attack the hell out of them, because you can't. Not now. Not with this Man United team. Take us back to an older Man United team. Well, that's just not a discussion for today. But in terms of who they are, who we are right now, I think that was the perfect move from Ten Hag, and obviously it worked. We got the win, 2-1. Our youngsters scoring 2 goals against Manchester City. It's very rare. So great performance, a great day, and something I'll always remember. And another reason why I think we should keep Ten Hag. Quickly touch on our Champions League campaign. 1-1, drew 1. 4 points in a Champions League group that had Galatasaray and Copenhagen in. No disrespect to those two teams. Obviously, they beat us, both of them. But not good enough at all. Especially not even getting a win against Galatasaray in both games. Drawing one and winning and losing the other. You saw Højlund perform well in these games, especially early on in the season. You saw Onana have his worst games of the season. I think the Premier League is reasonably strong, actually, if you compare him with other players in the league. But yeah, scoring quite a few goals apart from that last game, but it is against Bayern Munich, so it's one of those games where you kind of expect it. But yeah, defensively not good enough. Just defensively not good enough. And then obviously with this Gala game, 2 free kicks, 2 conceded by Onana. He probably cost us 3 points and a place either in the Europa League or the Champions League knockout rounds with those 2 mistakes. Because that's 3 points there. That pushes up the table, and we don't get knocked out of anything of all of it in that case. I don't know where we end up. I'd have to look at the table, but yeah, not good enough, and he probably cost us that. And I think if that was a win, and you get 2 wins and a draw, losing both to Bayern Munich, but again they look strong, we look weak. I wouldn't have said it was a good campaign, but I would have said it was adequate, and it got us through, and it did its job. It's one of those things. I think we had a similar campaign last year when Ronaldo scored a fair few in Europe. I would say he would be the difference maker this year, but I think Højlund did a good enough job at scoring. I mean, he got, 4, 5, 6 in the end? He was the top goal scorer in the competition at that point, at the end of the group stage. So, obviously, scoring wasn't an issue in Europe. We kind of went for it. I think Ten Hag kind of flipped his taxes and went, okay, no, we're not going to be solid. We're going to go for it. But again, other than this Gala game, the Bayern game, the Copenhagen game, just poor defensively. Just completely poor defensively. And then again against Galatasaray again, to lose it for us. So, not good enough at all. Scoring a lot of goals, but we need to be more solid at the back. Obviously, Martinez wasn't in for any of these games. I think Varane was in. But yeah, again, on his own, not really good enough. The backups to Martinez obviously weren't good enough because we conceded way too many goals. But yeah, it's a bit of a weak one there, especially. Let's talk about the players then, because this is probably the biggest discussion, other than how we performed, is how the players performed. So we'll go through it group by group, starting off with the goalkeepers. It's not much to compare for the goalkeepers, just because Onana played like 90% of the minutes. He played like a majority of the minutes, as you can see on the screen here. It's an interesting one. Bayındır probably performed better in limited appearances. Obviously, not conceding very many goals. Didn't really give a goal away, but didn't really prevent much either. He was kind of a bit average considering the situation. I think if you played Bayındır in the minutes that Onana had, shot stopper wise, probably would look slightly weaker, despite how the numbers kind of look. Just because he's not really preventing anything. The issue came with our defence leaking so many shots, and because it leaked so many shots, Onana had a lot to do, and he's more exposed, and more mistakes are going to be made in a larger amount of time. If you look at a bit further down, way more clean sheets, a decent save rate, pretty similar considering. It's it's not great for Boyundi. You'd expect this number to be slightly higher in those limited minutes and then drop, as I said previously. A massive improvement in exit per 90, which is his distribution, the kind of main thing with his distribution, in that Onana was kicking a lot more and passing out from the back and trying to play with his feet. I think with a stronger defence in front of him, he looks fantastic. I think he plays for Man City this season. He's on talks for goalkeeper of the season. Great signing, fantastic signing, all that jazz. But he's conceding a lot of City goals and he's not able to play out from the back passing wise as well because our defenders aren't as comfortable on the ball other than maybe Martinez. And Varane is okay. He's a world-class defender. Obviously he's going to be okay, but again, it's not his strong suit to be that kind of passer out there. That's why Martinez was supposed to be there. But obviously we didn't have him either. So I don't blame him for this. I don't blame him for this at all, especially given he prevented almost 7 goals, which is one of the best in the league. I think only Jose Sarr was better at preventing goals. But again, a lot of situations where he can prevent goals because he's facing so many shots, so he's going to have a high number there. But again, you have to kind of deal with what's in front of you. He faced a lot of shots and he prevented a lot of goals, which I think is important to consider, and a reason why I don't think we should move him on in the summer. I'm happy with him. Let's stick with this, keep moving forward, back the project. Defenders, Willy Kwambala, fantastic. More than good enough to be one of our centre-back corpus next season, whether that be 4th or 5th choice centre-back. Don't think he's ready to be 3rd choice, and I think we need to recruit in that area and really show our fans that we're ready to kind of commit to a kind of good defensive setup. But nevertheless, very good defender. This might annoy some Liverpool fans here, and I don't want to annoy you, but I'm going to do it, I guess. I think you put him on the same level as Quansah. I think if you swap them, I think Kwambala looks just as good as Quansah in the minutes that who would have gotten for Liverpool in those same minutes. I think he would have been just as good. Maybe slightly better because maybe he doesn't give away that pass to Bruno. But and I think if you put Quansah in this team, he would have just been exactly the same as Kwambala. Pretty decent looking at the numbers, but again, limited minutes. Surprisingly, didn't play the least number of minutes. Tyrell Malacia got that title. Obviously, he's been missing all season. And if you look at the numbers, him and Martinez played the same number of games. Obviously, Martinez was out with injury kind of issues. I think if you didn't have those, maybe it looks slightly different. But yeah, limited number of minutes, the kind of weakest in the active squad if you don't count Malacia and Martinez because of injury and whatever the hell happened to Malacia. He just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth for a bit. Although we did see him at the cup final, so maybe he's definitely alive now, which is good. We know he's safe. In those limited minutes, created more defensive actions than any other player. Wan-Bissaka again looking very strong in this metric here, getting down, getting dirty, going out and pressing players a lot. Obviously Shaw in limited minutes again looks strong in that area, and Martinez as well. Dalot doesn't look that strong defensively. We'll see this kind of going throughout. His merits come in his passing, so these kind of metrics don't really match him very well, but again looks reasonably weak, especially when you compare him with Wan-Bissaka. But that's probably not what he's being asked to do, so I don't judge him too harshly for that. Victor Lindelof isn't doing much, and that is a lot, and that there is a lot of minutes. Only 2 players played more minutes than him this season in defence, and that would be Dalot and that would be Maguire. Maguire again didn't do too much defensively, but what he is doing very, very well. If you look at Lindelof, not very strong in the air, not very strong on the ground either. At least with Maguire, he's doing less, but he's winning a lot more. That one of the highest win percentages on the ground and one of the highest in the air. With Kwambala being better than him in the air, which I wasn't expecting, but it's good to see. Luke Shaw again being aerially dominant, which is weird to say, but he has had a lot of minutes at centre-back whilst he was playing. Yeah, but just quickly going back to Lindelof, maybe when he's doing on the slide he's not as terrible, but again not making many interceptions, not pressing very much. And when you go from Martinez to Lindelof, that is a big drop off, and he has played in both positions this season. You can see he's been left and right, as well as playing at left back, so which would indicate he's kind of strong on that left hand side. So when you go from that to that, you then lose that kind of dominance in this kind of half space between the back line and the midfield line. So when teams are breaking, they have a lot more space to move into. He's not making interceptions. He's not winning the ball on the ground. And when it's played in over the top or whipped in from across, he's not dealing with it with his head. And that's a major, major issue. It's good to see Maguire performing quite well. So we'll move it down. Interception's not that strong, but again, doesn't do that job. Does it on the cover. Played right and left, probably more dominantly on the right. We had a weird period where we wouldn't play Varane because they played on the same side, so we played Lindelof as well, which was weird. Would like him to be a little bit better with the discipline, getting a lot of yellow cards, but again, no red cards. Same issue with Dalot. I would say the same. He needs to calm down a little bit. Koulibaly looked great, very composed. He looks the closest to Martinez that I've seen, but playing on the right side, which is... It means you can flip your system and play Maguire and him, and he can be the press from that right side. I don't think you could play Martinez and Koulibaly together, I don't think, personally. But again, winning the ball high, winning the ball with high interceptions, blocking a lot of shots as well, getting his body on the line, which is good to see, same as Martinez would have done there. Winning on the slide as well, winning in the air, just very composed. I know it's limited minutes, it's only 700 minutes, but to do this in 700 minutes is pretty promising. If it's going to drop from here, it's still going to be quite good. I wouldn't put confidence in him starting next season or being our starting centre-back or being our kind of first-choice backup because I think there are better options out there you could buy. This is very promising and it shows that potentially one day he could be our starting centre-back, and I would be okay with that at current because he looks very, very good. I'd make him our young player of the season, but, we'll get onto that. Anyway, quickly moving into midfield. One clear winner here is Bruno Fernandes. More assists, more expected assists. He actually underperformed his expected assists this season. He could have been better. He could have been completely better, and he just wasn't because players weren't getting on the end of his passes, which is odd. Eriksen before better than I thought he would. Got a lot of minutes. I thought he played a lot less than this, but it is what it is. Great with his assisting. Probably performed about as we'd expect him to in terms of assists. Getting on the ball, making a lot of passes. Very accurate with them. I would say there are a lot of backwards and side passes in there. A little bit more than I'd like, but not the worst at it. There's another name we'll talk about in a second. But great with his long passing as well, getting a lot of long passes off. And yeah, again, he can distribute from deep. You can see there he's getting a lot of length on that. And then he's probably our best second assister. So he's initiating the phase of play where an assist can be taken place. So he's starting from... You can see he's starting from a lot deeper, getting that pass off to an assister. Especially when we'll look later at who was the best assister, and a name who was up there was Garnacho. You can see that pass from him to Garnacho on that right hand side from the central area. You can see that second assist, and then the ball's whipped in. Yeah, very high in that metric. And then there's a name here for third assist, which we'll talk about in a second. Again, but also being that penetrative passer. Nobody passed the ball into the final third more than him, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it would be Bruno. Bruno's not far behind, but Bruno is not the best at it. And then, look down here. Again, a little bit dominant is through passing as well. But yeah, very decent season from Eriksen. We'll come on and we'll talk about him in a minute, but not terrible. Another name who I think we should mention is Diallo. Played almost the least number of minutes. Only Forson played less than him. But he's very accurate with what he's doing. So his passes are accurate, even if there aren't that many of them. When he is getting on the ball, he's not letting go of it easily. A lot of forward accurate passes again, although not as many. But again, with limited number of passes, that's still not terrible. Not the worst for back passes and not the worst for lateral passes, especially as a winger when you expect him to cross it a lot. That's not a lot of lateral passing, which is good because it means he's playing on the front foot, he's running at people. But when he is doing it, 100% accurate back passes, 95% accurate with lateral passes, perfect. Those are two numbers. It's not that big of a deal because I don't want you passing backwards and sideways either. But when you are doing it, when you have to do it, don't lose the ball. Don't lose the ball. And he's not doing it very often, which is good. Obviously not passing long very often, but when he's doing it, he's 100% accurate, which I didn't expect to see. This is a number I'm really pleased by. Lots of short passing. Lots of short, intricate passing. I don't want this number to be high, but when he is playing long, I expect it to be accurate. I expect him to have some distance on it. Obviously, that's something we need to work on, but again, as a winger, maybe not as important. But yeah, good from that. Lots of expected assists as well. And then here, 100% of his smart passes. Lots of smart thinking. And when he is doing smart passes, things are happening. You could see that at the end of the season in the last few minutes that he got. He got a couple of goals. He was accurate with everything. He was dangerous. He was probably our most dangerous player. And also getting a lot of key passes off. Perfect. What more do you want? Passes into the penalty area, again, 100%. Who gets 100% of their passes into the penalty area being accurate? Who does that? When does that happen? I know it's only 0.8 per game, but that's still like almost one a game. And it's accurate every single time. Ridiculous. Playing quite deep, obviously got a lot of deep completions done. But yeah, pretty solid. Obviously we'll talk about Kobe a bit later, but again, there wasn't anything he was massively terrible at, apart from maybe his key passes and the passes to the penalty area. Everything else was solid. Nothing standing out, but again, solid in terms of the numbers. And yeah, in terms of weaknesses in the team, Rashford didn't contribute as much. Obviously, lots of lateral passes, which is not something I like to see. But again, not much to shout about. Lots of second assists. Which is important, but again, nothing to write home about. Very average. If those were main numbers, I probably wouldn't have been upset with them. But you played 3,700 minutes and you were our best goal scorer from last season. You expect more. The fact that Garnacho's played more games says a lot as well. Says a lot, and he was very good with his assisting as well. We'll quickly touch on the strikers. Martial barely played, and Højlund played a lot. Højlund got 19 goals. Martial got 2. Only thing I would say is that Højlund's shots aren't as accurate as I'd like, but again, he's not receiving the ball in the areas that I'd like. So is that an issue with him, or is that a tactical issue? Something to be debated, and something for Ten Hag to potentially fix next season if he sees it as an issue. But yeah, Martial getting a lot of more of his shots on target, but again, receiving a lot, 0.8 shots, half the number of shots per game. So maybe it's not too bad. But again, you can see here, not much is better for Martial, and it's time to kind of cut ties there. We'll quickly touch on some kind of team stats here as well. Bruno getting 23 goals, being our top goal scorer and our top assister. Maguire being in both lists. Mainu being in both lists in his debut season. McTominay being in both lists. Rashford makes it onto both lists. Anybody else? Dalot makes it onto both lists. I think that's it. Garnacho, I don't know if I mentioned him before, he's on both. So some names popping up there. Garnacho being a key assister is massive for him. Being top, I think you can't really count Bruno because he's always going to be top assister and he's always going to be top goal scorer. So I think Garnacho being second is massive. Eriksen being joint second is also massive. I didn't think he had that great of a season, but if you look at the numbers, yeah, very, very good. Dalot contributing high with his assists and then obviously quite a few goals considering he's a right back. Very good. Wan-Bissaka getting quite a few contributions as well, which is good to see. And then Maguire back to scoring and assisting with his head. We missed that last season. He didn't really do much with his head, which is kind of why a major reason why we bought him with his aerial dominance in both boxes. So it's good to see him back. Bruno taking a lot of shots and getting a lot of goals, I'm not mad about. Excuse me. Garnacho getting the second most, but not getting the second most goals does frustrate me a little bit. He's taking a lot of shots and they're not always accurate. But it doesn't annoy me as much as Rashford's. Garnacho's young. You expect him to miss shots. You expect him to be a bit rash with decision making. He'll work on that. He'll improve. Rashford should know better. 10% of your shots on our goal end up in goals. You expect more. I can't be too happy with that at all. McTominay getting into a lot of situations. He's a lot better, a lot less shots, but again, 13 goals, a lot better. Højlund's accuracy wasn't great, but it's still not bad. Again, 71 shots dropping to 19 goals. It's better than McTominay. It's better than Rashford. It's probably better than Bruno if you work out the maths. So as much as Bruno's shots, Højlund's shots on target isn't great, probably better than everybody else. So not terrible. Maguire getting 4 from 23 isn't bad, but again doesn't get too many shooting opportunities. And then Anthony 3 from 60. It's pretty shocking as well. In terms of key passes, just a quick summary for key passes. Bruno being the best is not surprising. Diallo being up there probably doesn't factor in the fact he didn't play very often, but again, very good in what he did do. So maybe that earns him a bit more time next season. He can build on that. Eriksen being up there is good. He's a good contributor to have around the team. Garnacho being up there is good. Shaw and Rashford being up there is also very, very good. And then Mount, we expect more. Especially if you're the backup 10. If you're going to be the guy to give Bruno a rest, which you didn't do because you got injured, and Bruno played every single minute of most games, I expect you to be doing more. I expect you to be getting high 60s at least. In my opinion, you should be at least here. You should be around the same as Eriksen, in my opinion, actually. Scrap that, put him up as high as Eriksen. That's where I want you to be, if that's going to be the job that you do. Otherwise, we need to rethink what you are or whether or not you need to be here. So, but we'll touch on that another time. Casemiro being the best defensive actions doesn't surprise me. Again, he's had this terrible season that we can see, but he started the season as our top goal scorer. And then he was forced to play at centre-back, which he's never really done before that I can think of. Didn't do it much for Real Madrid, otherwise I'd know about it. And he was pretty shocking at centre-back because he's got no legs, because he's not a centre-back. And he's old. Like, what were you expecting? Him to be the beating, the Saliba, but Saliba the better, to be like an experienced Saliba? Is that what you thought was going to happen when you put Casemiro at centre-half? Is that what you wanted, really? It was an injury crisis and we had nobody else, and he did a job back there. A pretty shocking job, but you did a job. You can't really be judged for that. It's clear to see that his legs have gone, which I didn't... Because you play midfield, you don't see it as much, but now we know for a fact that Casemiro's legs have gone. But yeah, Kouambala being up there is massive, especially even though it's in limited minutes. You hit high ceilings with limited minutes, so when you drop, you're not going to be far off. Wan-Bissaka being up there is massive. Martinez being up there, it would be even better had he played the entire season, I think. Evans being up there is really good to see. Obviously, we weren't supposed to sign him, but when he did play, he was fantastic. I think most United fans would agree with that. So good to see. This might say something about Mount's positioning. The fact that he was up there with his offensive actions, having to play slightly deeper than he was used to. But again, got injured a lot, so we'll see. Shaw in there as well. Varane having a good season defensively, very good in the air. Most of these were aerial clearances from what I could see throughout the season. Lots of aerial dominance. So not bad. And then Amrabat's up there as well, which I think is good to see, and we'll come on to that in a minute. Let's quickly touch on some player sales. So these are players that I think will leave in summer based on this season. So who from the season has earned themselves a sale, basically. Johnny Evans will leave at the end of his contract, and I don't think we should extend it. I don't see any reason to, unless you were to give him a staff contract. Been great servant. Good to see you back one last time, Johnny. You've been a great servant for us this season and covered a lot of areas, but we need to be stronger in that centre-back area. We need younger, quicker, higher presses to play modern football, and so we need to clear out a spot. And especially given how good Kouambala's been, he can do the job that you would have done. So I'm happy to let him go at the end of his contract. I think we get 10 for Lindelof. I think we could sell him to a kind of larger European side from another league, or to a lower Premier League team for about 10 million. That's a bit of a bargain. You could even see him going to potentially Everton in a swap deal for Branthwaite. That's an option. He's been poor defensively, and he doesn't assist in build-up play. He tends to hide through games, and I don't see a reason to keep him around. He is very weak, and I think we can do massively better than him. Varane, obviously, we know is leaving at the end of his contract. Controversially, I would have kept him. I know he's older, but he's been our best defender this season, probably. Even Dalot has been great going forward, but defensively looked reasonably poor in comparison. Varane has held down that ship with Martinez gone. I would have kept him, but it is £340,000 a week off the wage bill, which we can spend not only in translate a bit of it to transfers, but you can pay somebody over £100,000 a week to do his job. So you can use that wages to pay for somebody else, and I think that's probably what we'll do. Could even get Toss in on a free transfer, and he would cost $100,000, which you could take out of Varane's wages. Maybe even you can use Johnny Evans' wages, because I don't know how much he'd be on, but I don't think it'd be much higher than this. Maybe a 30 grand or something, whatever. Take it up to 100. But yeah, end of his contract. Nothing we can do. See you later. Thank you for your service, Rafa Varane. Massive defender. It's one of these players that you like. I'm proud to have seen him play for my club. I'm proud to say that Rafa Varane played for Manchester United. That hits me, you know. But Tyrell Malacia, bit of an unfortunate one, but he is injury prone. He didn't play a lot last season, hasn't played at all this season, whether it's injuries or mental health or he went to prison. I saw that was a rumour. That was a weird one. We need the spot to be filled by somebody else. I would have given the spot to Alvaro Fernandez, but we decided to sell him to Benfica for £6 million, which seems ridiculous. But yeah, time to move him on. 15 million, probably about what we paid for him. He's still young, he's still talented, if a bit injury prone. It's not a big risk for a club to pay 15 million for Malacia. And I think we could do with being a slightly more dominant in that position, especially when the other option is Luke Shaw, who is also reasonably injury prone. We haven't got room to have another injury prone left back. So move him on. Happy to do a swap deal for get Reguilon back, actually. That would be something I'd be willing to do. But I think instead of that, let's go for somebody a bit stronger, which another video we can film about how I would take Man United forward and how I think we should, because I have my thoughts on that. Anthony needs to go. I know we're taking a massive loss, but I rank around 20. I reckon some club will be willing to pay 20. I think a Lyon. I've seen rumours of France. I think Lyon will be willing to pay 20 million for him as a forward option for them, and he'd do quite well in France. I think he'd get a lot more goals and assists. I know it's only one bad season. I know last season wasn't that great, but he isn't contributing enough. He's on a massive contract with a lot of wages. He's irritating a lot of fan base. His playing style isn't that positive, and I think if we sell him, we have room to bring in somebody else who is going to be a lot better for us and fits us a lot better. Potentially an Elise. Who knows who we go for? But I think there are a lot of options who are better than him, and so I don't see a reason to keep him. I know I've said a lot of good things about Christian Eriksen, but I would look to sell him. I know he's 36, so he's probably aging out of the team, which is why I think we should move him on. I wouldn't be upset with him being a backup option in there next season. I wouldn't be upset with that, but when I think we can get about 10 million for him to a Brentford, who would pay that little for an older player, or to send him back to Denmark potentially, I think that's a decent amount to get, and I think getting 150 grand off our wage bill is massive, especially when you can tell that he's too old now. Last season he was good at a good contributor. Had started a lot more games. He looked like he would drain the last of his kind of energy out of him, and this season he looks completely dead. So great servant, a great season. Time to move on. Same deal for Casemiro. I know it's not his fault that he's conceded so many goals this season, but still not good enough. We need to have a better player in there, someone with a lot more legs, someone who's willing to run around and kick three shades of shit out of somebody, which I think the Roy Keane role, just going around and scything people down. We need someone in there who can do that, and Casemiro can't. He's too slow. He's not there anymore, unfortunately. So I think we can do better for the money we can get for him, which I think is about 15. Send him to Brazil, send him to PSG, send him to Saudi. Saudi would pay that money. And get £350,000 a week off our wage bill, the most in our team other than Varane, who is also leaving, by the way. We're saving a lot of money in wages by getting those two off the books, whether I'd keep Varane or not. The position needs to be strengthened, as I've said, and just a large contract. Just get him gone, use the money, reinvest it into an option. I'd actually use that 15 million and turn that around and activate the release clause of Amrabat, keep him for another season, which I know not a lot of people would be upset about. I wouldn't keep him as a starter, but I think the last few games have shown me when he's actually given a run of games, he's not bad, and I think he's a reliable option to have in the team, covering at left back if he needs to, but mainly playing in midfield from now on. And again, has got legs, can run around, can dominate that space if we need him to against the smaller clubs. Did it against Man City and looked the best he's been in all season. So I wouldn't be upset with keeping him. I think he's more than good enough to be a backup DM in the Premier League for a big club, so happy with him. Here's a big money exit. Scott McTominay has been one of our best goal scorers this season and good contributor. I think it's time to cash in. We would have got 30 off of West Ham in the summer, so I think if you can get him for 30 last summer and he's just had a good goal scoring season, you could easily put 5 more million on that. It would be the same for Maguire had I wished to sell him, but there are a lot of centre backs leaving, 3 in there and a left back. I don't think we can afford to lose him as well, especially when he's probably going to be one of our backup centre backs this season, probably on the right to whoever we bring in to start to replace Varane. And I think he's earned a chance to stay. I think the issue I have with McTominay is that he eats up Bruno's space too much. He plays in that 10. That's where he plays well. And he goes into the box, makes those runs, which is what Bruno does so well, those late runs into the box. That's how we got our second against Man City on the weekend. That's how we got it. By making him that run to the box, someone's coming in behind him, another midfielder coming in behind him in Cobby, which is where McTominay kind of should be if this was going to work, which it doesn't because he can't do that run. And then he's able to tap it in, or run into the box, striker on the end of it, chip it across, or look to play it out wide for a cross. That run from McTominay should be being done by Bruno. And I think we cash in after a good season, not saving much on the wages, but getting that big money in for him. Sell him to West Ham, sell him to an Everton. Those two clubs, I've been linked with him before. I think he'd do a good job for them, be the kind of main attacking force from midfield. Be very good for them, but yeah, time to let him go and make the money. Big money sale next, and this, is it controversial? I suppose it probably is. Jadon Sancho probably should go. Not a bad player, and I wanted him to work so well because having a City player do well for Man United, an ex-City player doing well for Man United, and just celebrating against them would have been massive. I was so looking forward to signing him. He was the one player I was like, yes, give me this man. He's going to be so good for the fans, so good for the club. A positive attacking force, not much pace, but just pure creativity, ball control. He's what Cobby is, but just in wide spaces, that complete control over the ball. And you've seen it for Dortmund. You've seen him ruin the defences in the Champions League. He's had such a good loan spell in the second half of the season. Kind of a weak start, but then really grown into it, especially with those Champions League performances. Lots of dribbles, lots of beating of his man. It's time to use that to our advantage. Save almost £200,000 in wages, make 40 million off him, selling him back to Dortmund, which I think they're willing to do. I think he's worth that much as well, and just fresh start time. He will be great for Dortmund, depending on whether Terzic changes, stays. But that's a whole other conversation. We get 40 million and a lot of wages, and we can go out and sign. That money can be used to sign Elise. That money, use some of the wages and all of the transfer budget, flip it straight back on Elise's release clause, and we get a useful contributor, Premier League proven, exactly the style that Ten Hag needs to play on that right-hand side or on that left, potentially. That's a whole other conversation. Lots of conversations span from this, by the way. When we do a video on how I take us forward, I'll explain why I think Elise is off the left. But yeah, to swap Sancho for Elise, I think is a perfect move and definitely something I'm willing to do. And that's what we can do by selling him for that much money. Van de Beek just hasn't worked. Time for a fresh start. Sell him for 10 million. Make 90 in the wages. Done. Simple as. Martial, end of his contract. Massive contract. £250,000 a week, which is mental for a player of his, how little he contributes. End of his contract, he'll go back to France or go to a smaller Premier League side and be a useful contributor. Kind of like a Danny Welbeck level. That's where I see him. And he'll be fine. Thank you for the moments, but kindly, time to leave now. Thank you, goodbye, basically. Not much else needs to be said. I think everyone else agrees, and we were never going to renew his contract at all. And then finally, a certain Mason needs to leave, not Mount, the other one. 30 million, because a team in Italy or Spain will pay that money for him after a decent spell at Getafe. Not much wage saved, but again, 30 million. I'm not going to say anything else in the matter because I'm not going to say anything else in the matter. But that leaves us with a total of £185 million, which we could spend. And I think I will spend it on another video. It's interesting to see that how much wages we save as well, because we pay quite a lot of money to these aging stars. We have done it recently, the last couple of seasons, and now they're leaving. We can save quite a lot. That's 100 million if we were just to move that into our accounts to spend on transfers. It's another 100 million. Obviously, we never do that because we need some of this wage money to pay the new incomings. But it's a lot there. Over almost £2 million a week for an entire year. Oof, Jesus. So 101 in wages, 185 total wage, a total budget in. We'll come back to this, but I think this is a lot more money than I was expecting to have. Sales of Sancho and Greenwood really boost that. McTominay as well. But yeah, getting rid of some of these smaller players for cheap fees, just chipping into this pot that we've got. Plus, we'll have some money to spend from the from Ineos as well. This could be a good little transfer kit that we need to really start changing the squad a little bit more in Ineos' way. Again, we'll come back to it. Let's move on to our final thing. It's just our awards. There's just a few of them to talk about. First of all, player of the season. I think it's pretty obvious. It's Bruno. Yeah, I think he was kind of quiet for me the first half of the season, but then really took control on the back end, and especially in the FA Cup final, looked a lot more like a captain. Stopped diving as much. Still does it. Stopped diving as much, and looked to be the leader that we expect him to be, what we need him to be, until we can find somebody else who is a really, really good leader. I want our Roy Keane replacement 20, 30 years later. So many years later, Jesus. Finally replace Roy Keane as a captain in there. I think Cobby is a decent option actually when he grows up. He's nowhere near ready yet, but I think that youngster, controlling midfield, calm, composed, he strikes me as a person who could grow into a good leader. Whether or not he's captain or not, who knows, and he certainly isn't ready yet, but one day that might be his role. Young player of the season, it is Kobbie Mainoo. Just, he looks so experienced, so, I know I keep saying composed, but it's just such a nice word, and he does it so well. His passing is so crisp and reliable. I trust him in tight spaces. I trust him to make that kind of crossfield pass. When he gets on the ball, I'm excited. He can score a banger. He can pull off an amazing assist. Doesn't specify. He doesn't do one thing very, very well. He does everything good. I see him becoming the De Jong of this team. If you look back at Ten Hag's Ajax, that kind of player in midfield who just controls the tempo, picks up the ball deep, drags up the pitch, just pulls the team up the pitch. I expect him to make everybody else better. And if you pair him with a destroyer, a Casemiro replacement, he looks even better. I think next season you see him contributing with a few more goals, a few more assists, and those numbers start to look a little bit better. Because obviously he looks so much better on the pitch than he does in the numbers. But even though his numbers are still very good and very consistent. Goal of the season, no surprises here either. It's Garnacho versus Everton, bicycle kick. One goal of the season in the Premier League. Thank God. I was worried they were going to give it to somebody else. I can't even think who it would have been, but I was worried for a second. But no, obviously, I mean, I've said to everybody else that I think it's the greatest goal of all time. Let me know in the comments. Do you think it's the greatest goal of all time, or have you got any other options? Is it Rooney's? Is it who else is it? Like, is it Bale in the Champions League? Karius drops it. I don't know what the greatest of all time would be for you guys, but for me, it's this one. The way he takes it, where he takes it so far out to score a bicycle kick from there. Oh, ridiculous. This is a bit of a bittersweet one. Signing of the season. There weren't very many options, so I said, fuck it. I'm giving it to Jonny Evans, because you came in for nothing. You were supposed to be on trial just training with us. You came in for nothing. We asked you to do a job because we couldn't sign a centre-back. You did it on the cheap. You played way more games than you should have done. You probably put some kind of long-term injury on yourself doing this, by the way. There's no way that when he retires, he's fully fit after this season. He's put his body on the line for us so often. I can't think of anyone more deserving. So thank you so much for doing this for us, Johnny. It's going to be soppy now, Jesus. But yeah, signing of the season, Jonny Evans for me. Because I think that's just fitting. I think that's just perfect. Signing of the season and then moving to retirement as a United legend or a hero or whatever you want to call him, but definitely somebody in the books of Man United's history. Black mark of the season. There was lots of options to put in this list. I think a lot of people would have put Anthony Casemiro, but a lot of the issues I don't know if they're their particular's fault. A lot of Ten Hag issues, a lot of injury issues, a lot of positional issues. So I gave it to Victor Lindelof because I think he's just shown his level. Although we saw his level before, but this season specifically we've seen his level and we know, everybody knows, how not good enough he is, how terrible he is. So Victor Lindelof is my black mark of the season, and to be respectful, thank you for your service, but please now F off. This was an interesting one. I decided to put this in there because I wanted to do something controversial, because people who know me and people who watch me on the Blue Podcast will know that I love to do something controversial. Next season's surprise player, it's going to be Amrabat. I see him staying for cheap. I see him taking everyone's feedback on board. I see him playing a fair few minutes, rotating with whoever comes in, and doing really well when he plays. I don't see him playing much at left back anymore, although he can do it, which is useful. I don't see him playing much at left back because we've all covered that. But when he does play, I see him just covering everything, doing what he did in the World Cup, but in real life. And I see him changing a lot of people's minds, because right now people say don't make the loan permanent. What an awful signing. Lee Catamol links were made, which I think is weird because they're nowhere near the same player. I see Amrabat being a good destroyer and a useful member of the team. I hate to say it, but a bit like Fred was. Although I think Fred wasn't good enough. But a lot of people don't agree with me. I think people will do the same thing with Amrabat next season. And I have a lot more time for Amrabat. I do. I don't know why. I think it's probably because he loves to make those kind of harsh tackles, which I love. That Roy Keane tackle. The break your ankles or win the ball, one or the other. Every time, kind of tackle. And I think we'll change a lot of people's minds this season. And I'm kind of excited to see kind of where we go with this. But that's all we have time for today. We're going to talk about the United team going forward. It probably will be in the next video. I'm going to write the script for that now, I think, because I think it's very interesting and I've got a lot of ideas. And I've actually done it a couple of times this season already, and not a lot has changed from last time, but I still want to make a couple of changes. Who knows? But I think it'll be interesting to see where I would take us using Ten Hag's style, using numbers and statistics. Who fits Ten Hag well? Who is going to be that player when Klopp wanted Asensio, he got Salah, and look how that turned out. Who is going to be, he wanted Anthony, but he got him. But, the next line along, if you know what I mean. Because not a lot of managers are great are great directors of football as well. So that's coming very, very soon. If you want to see more of me, if you haven't seen the Blue Podcast already, go check that out. It's linked on my channel somewhere. I think it's in my favourites. So go check out the Blue Podcast, where I will be a lot more often, talking about more things than Manchester United. And yeah, maybe drop me a sub if you haven't already, and we can talk a bit more about Manchester United. I can share my opinions. I'm happy to take on board your opinions. We'll do a video where we can talk about some of the comments and what you guys are feeling and thinking. And yeah, I'll catch you next time.